subject.
Karine? Was the Corvette searched, Karine?
Thank you, Karine. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go
Thank
ahead.
you, Karine. I have a couple of questions here, but I wanted to follow up quickly. You have said repeatedly that the president's lawyers did the right thing, but you also said earlier during the briefing of the president's lawyers immediately reaching out to the National Archives that, quote, they were not compelled to do it. They did it voluntarily. Is it the position of the White House that legally the president could have just held on to these?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they did the right thing, period. I wouldn't read into it. I'm saying that they did the right thing and they did it voluntarily because it is the right thing to do when you find these types of documents to indeed reach out to the archivists and reach out to the Department of Justice. So they, and outside of that, they have been cooperating very closely with the Department of Justice. It is and rightfully so, they did this.
But I guess I'm just a little confused and I want to move on. But what did you mean when you said that they, were not compelled to do it?
They did it. They did the right thing.
Okay.
That's it.
Well,
I wouldn't go into down into a rabbit hole on this. They did the right thing by reaching out to the archivist and to the Department of Justice.
Does the White House know how many stops these classified documents made before they ended up in his home in Delaware or in the Biden pen office? For instance, can you rule out that there was a third stop between a secure location and the garage?
Again, I would refer you to Department of Justice.
And then there was a question that was asked about the visitor logs with regards to folks who have come in and out of the president's home in Delaware. Does the administration have any idea between the garage and the Biden pen office just how many people could have gotten their hands on this? Or, are we to assume that the White House doesn't have an estimate that they
There's
don't
an
know?
ongoing review on this, and I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
Okay, and then, just finally, the president has said that his lawyers have advised him not to ask what was in these classified documents. I don't understand the purpose of that. He's the president of the United States. He has access to
Because
all
we're trying to
classified
do this by the book. We're trying to do this in the appropriate way. And so that's what I would say to you. His team has been complying, right, cooperating with the Department of Justice, and I will leave it there. I'm not going to go beyond.
The book says that he can't look at this. What would compel him or push him in that direction? Because you've said it repeatedly. What, I guess, as he tries to do this by the book, as he tries to do the right thing, what are his lawyers looking at that says, yeah, don't look at this classified information that was found?
Again, there's a process here. The process is that when the lawyers found that these documents existed, they reached out to the archive and also the Department of Justice. That is the process, and they have been cooperating closely, working closely with the Department of Justice. And now, as you've heard, the Attorney General made a statement today, and so I would refer you to them. All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Karine. In the statement from the special counsel about the second set of documents, it says the lawyers have completed the ongoing review by the president's legal team last night. Does that mean there are no other locations where documents could be stored? There's no other search underway at this moment in time for documents from the Vice President's side? So
as I'm just going to, again, that statement pretty much lays it out, that they have, as part of the lawyers, they look through the places where documents could have been stored, and the counsel's office released a statement on that. Now it is in the hands of the special counsel.
So we should assume that it has been completed?
You should assume that it's been completed, yes.
Okay, and then I just want to square something that Chris was asking about. The review was underway when you guys gave a detailed statement about the first set of documents. The review was underway when the president spoke about the first set of documents. You're now saying that you didn't talk about the second set of documents discovered almost a month prior because a review was underway. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
The
I think
review was underway the entire time. The only difference was that reporters had information on the first set of documents, and therefore you chose to exclude the second set of documents until reporters got information on the second set of documents.
Well, let me unconfuse you for a second, Phil. Look, we are trying to do this by the book. And I said yesterday this was under review by the Department of Justice. And the process is as such. When the president's lawyers realized that the documents existed, that they were there, They reached out to the archives. They reached out to the Department of Justice. Rightfully so, may I add. That is what you're supposed to do as lawyers. That's what they did. And they have fully been cooperating with the Department of Justice. And again, I said this earlier in answering a question. You heard from the Attorney General. He said shortly after the documents were discovered, that we did outreach. The President's lawyers did outreach to the Department of Justice and archivists.
Nobody's questioning that. That's not what we're asking about. We're asking about.
I'm telling you that there's a process. I just laid out what the process is.
I'm asking
And I'm
about the
telling you that
public
we
process
were
of-
trying to do this by the book, and it was an ongoing process. I'm not going to get beyond that, but that is how this works.
How can you say this
Yeah.
was transparent
Okay.
when
Thank you,
you've
Karine.
sat on this information for more than 2 months?
Thank you, Karine.
Thank you.
We are,
Karine?
Was the Corvette searched, Karine?
Thank you,
Thank-
thank you, Karine. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no,
Thank you, Karine. I have a couple of questions here, but I wanted to follow up quickly. You have said repeatedly that the President's lawyers did the right thing, but you also said earlier during the briefing of the President's lawyers immediately reaching out to the National Archives that, quote, they were not compelled to do it. They did it voluntarily. Is it the position of the White House that legally the President could have just held on to these?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they did the right thing, period. I wouldn't read into it. I'm saying that they did the right thing and they did it voluntarily because it is the right thing to do when you find these types of documents to indeed reach out to the archivists and reach out to the Department of Justice. So they, and outside of that, they have been cooperating very closely with the Department of Justice. It is and rightfully so, they did this.
But I guess I'm just a little confused and I want to move on. But what did you mean when you said that they, were not compelled to do it?
They did the right thing. That's it. I wouldn't go down into a rabbit hole on this. They did the right thing by reaching out to the archivists and to the Department of Justice.
Does the White House know how many stops these classified documents made before they ended up in his home in Delaware or in the Biden pen office? For instance, can you rule out that there was a third stop between a secure location and the garage?
Again, I would refer you to Department of Justice.
And then there was a question that was asked about the visitor logs with regards to folks who have come in and out of the President's home in Delaware. Does the administration have any idea between the garage and the Biden pen office just how many people could have gotten their hands on this? Or, are we to assume that the White House doesn't have an estimate that they
There's
don't
an
know?
ongoing review on this, and I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
Okay, and then, just finally, the President has said that his lawyers have advised him not to ask what was in these classified documents. I don't understand the purpose of that. He's the President of the United States. He has access to
Because
all
we're trying to
classified
do this by the book. We're trying to do this in the appropriate way. And so that's what I would say to you. His team has been complying, right, cooperating with the Department of Justice, and I will leave it there. I'm not going to go beyond.
The book says that he can't look at this. What would compel him or push him in that direction? Because you've said it repeatedly. What, I guess, as he tries to do this by the book, as he tries to do the right thing, what are his lawyers looking at that says, yeah, don't look at this classified information that was found?
Again, there's a process here. The process is that when the lawyers found that these documents existed, they reached out to the archive and also the Department of Justice. That is the process, and they have been cooperating closely, working closely with the Department of Justice. And now, as you've heard, the Attorney General made a statement today, and so I would refer you to share.
Karine, since you don't have any answer on the classified document,
Go
are
ahead.
you still a good fit for this job?
Go ahead.
Because
Go
we
ahead, my
don't
friend.
seem to have any answer for you.
Go ahead, my friend.
It's briefing and waste of time.
Has any meeting been set between the President and the Speaker yet?
I don't have a meeting to announce from here with Speaker McCarthy. I know that it is we've commented on this. This is something that the President is certainly looking forward to. And look, he's willing and wants to work with the Speaker in good faith in delivering in a bipartisan way for the American people. Don't have anything to preview at this time.
Before or after the State of the Union?
This is something that he would, as you know, it's tradition, right, for the President to meet with the new Congress before the State of the Union. Just don't have anything to share at this time.
On the meeting that will happen, I know that when the President spoke about it, it was in the context of the deficit and debt, having those conversations. Is that sort of what the engagement would be limited to, or would the President want to expand out the you've talked a lot about gun violence or the border.
So look, there's going to be a range of issues that's going to be discussed. As you mentioned, when he was talking about the deficit, he was talking about wanting to work in a bipartisan way to continue to lower the debt, right? Which he has been able to do by $1.7 trillion in a historic record. He's always willing to have good faith conversation to deliver for the American people in that way. But when it comes to, the debt limit, the debt ceiling, the president has been very clear. I have been very clear. You've heard from our economics team about that, how this should be done without conditions. That still stands. And we can't forget that, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, the debt ceiling has been dealt with 78 times since 1960, 49 times under a Republican president, and 29 times with a Democratic president. And let's not also forget, I think this is something that people who need to understand, when you talk about the debt ceiling, you're talking about not more new spending, you're talking about what Congress, the bill that Congress has racked up, right? This is their basic duty to deal with the debt ceiling. When the president walked in, if you look at the debt ceiling right now, 90% of it was before the president walked into office. So this is their duty. This is their duty to do this in a bipartisan way. That's what we're talking about. And when Republicans are saying they're going to, they want to cut Social Security, they want to cut Medicare, they want to cut programs that Americans have paid into, that's going to hurt senior citizens, that's going to hurt our veterans, that's going to hurt taxpayers. And so that's what we're talking about. And so it is their basic duty to deal with this. Go ahead, Stevie. Yes.
We know that Chicago, Atlanta, and New York City are in the running for the Democratic Convention, and ultimately the decision is up to President Biden. What are the factors he's looking for, and will the whole city be announced before the president makes his second term announcement official, or is the timing not related?
Okay, so first let me answer your last question first, which is the president has said many times that he intends to run. I'm not going to go beyond that. That is for the president to decide clearly. And look, that question that you just asked me is a political question that lives with the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, so that I would refer you to them. But all of us are probably tracking that a decision hasn't been made on that front. Again, that's for the DNC to decide. But just like many of you, all of you here, we will all find out at the same time which city gets chosen. I just can't speak to that from here.
I wasn't asking about the DNC.
Oh, okay.
I was asking because the DNC does the vetting and the site selection, but then they give a recommendation to the president, who is the decider, just like when the primary happened. The news came out from him. So that's why I'm asking you a little bit more how this may work out.
Well, the president is the leader of the Democratic Party, but from here, I cannot talk about politics, so that's why I'm referring you to the DNC. Okay.
This is the 78th anniversary of the atom bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the G7 next month will be in Hiroshima. Do you know if there's a visit plan to the memorial? And last time you were in Japan, you never got to see anything, so we take a little time to see a few of the sites.
Oh, that's so kind.
And the second follow-up is that there's great shock in Japan about the arrest of the opposition candidate. It's very common in many parts of the world, but most people didn't expect it to ever happen in America. What do you, just a comment on that?
Wait, say that last part again. There's a lot of talk in Japan.
There's been a lot of shock in Japan as to the arrest of the opposition candidate. It's very common in many parts of the world.
You're talking about which opposition candidate you're talking about?
Upcoming election.
Oh, you're talking about the U.S.
Yeah, and it's very common. Many parts of the world it's very common, but people just never expected that to happen in America. So just a view of that from outside.
I love how you guys are asking me this in different ways. It's very, of course, you guys are clever. The first question, I don't have anything to announce at this time about the G7. Once we have something to share, certainly we'll share that with all of you. On the second one, I'm just not going to comment from here, and so I'll leave it there. Okay, everybody. All right, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Karine. Can you tell us how many migrant children are presently in U.S. custody?
I would refer you to the HHS. I don't have those numbers in front of me.
The website has not reported any data on this since January, and they're typically reported once a month. So in light, especially of this migrant death of a child a couple of days ago, just want to know why that data is not there, and if it's being kept somewhere else, if it'll be released to us.
Well, first, as I will reiterate, as I mentioned to Zeke, who asked this question, our hearts go out to the family members. It is a devastating news and incredibly saddened to hear that news. There's a medical investigation that started on May 10th. That's we're going to allow that process to continue. As far as the data, that is something that comes from HHS, so I would have to refer you to them.
Will the administration be working to track that down? Because especially after the New York Times report that HHS lost contact with 85,000 children over the course of the last 2 years and lost immediate contact with a third of migrant children, that data not being there is alarming.
I expect the HHS to provide that data. That is something that they would have for you to share with you. I just don't have that data right at this time.
On the ruling in Florida last night against these releases and the Biden administration's statement in that legal filing that 45,000 individuals are going to be in custody by the end of this month if we're not able to go forward with this process of releases. What's the backup plan now?
So let me just say on the ruling that you just laid out to me. So look, the way we see that, it's sabotage. It's pure and simple. That's how that reads to us. The claims that CBP is allowing or encouraging mass release of migrants and is just categorically false. That is not what's occurring. That is not what's happening. And it is a harmful ruling, and the Department of Justice is going to fight it. That's what we're going to see, and we're going to continue to use every tool that we have to make sure that we are dealing with this issue in a humane and orderly way. And so just last night, ICE announced that it is adding thousands more beds. But look, Republican elected officials continue to play games here. They continue to have political stunts, and they don't want to solve this problem. They want to use it, again, as a campaign tool for them. And so what we want to make sure is deal with this challenging circumstances. That's what we have done since day one of this administration. Look, I'm going to be in line with my NSC colleague and say the same. I'm not going to be commenting on that particular merger, so we don't have anything to share at this time. But when it comes to human rights, as we have said over and over again, this is something that the president has been very clear about and has brought that up with leaders that he's met with, and so that is never anything that we shy away from. But on this particular merger, we're just not going to comment from here.
Just one small thing, because I don't think Kirby mentioned this specifically. Has the president spoken to President Zelensky about the explosion at the dam, or do they have a plan to talk today? I mean, I know they talk frequently.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you know, they talk frequently. We talk to their team pretty frequently, especially over the last 15 months. Don't have a call to read out with President Zelensky that the president would have had. Just don't have anything at this time to share.
On the case involving the president's son, but the president previously criticized the Supreme Court ruling that his legal team is preparing to use, should he be charged, as an affront to common sense and the Constitution. I just want to know if that statement from June of last year still holds, or if he is viewing that ruling in a new light.
I'm just not going to comment on this.
And on the merger, the Wall Street Journal editorial board said this is more than just a private deal. It's really about MBS sort of thumbing his nose at the president. They point out that the Saudis entered a China brokered deal with Iran. They are cozying up to Maduro, cut oil production ahead of Blinken's visit, helping Russia, driving up prices, hurting Biden. And they write, is Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman trolling President Biden? Call it the revenge of the pariah.
I can't comment to or lay out what the thinking of the Saudi Arabia official or government are. As it relates to this merger, we're just not going to comment on this deal. It is two private entities, and we're just not going to comment.
Does that risk making the president look weak if there's no comment? When you have Democratic senators saying that the president's Justice Department should be looking at this with respect to antitrust questions, foreign registration questions, doesn't no comment fall short?
First of all, the president does not look weak. This is a president, because of his leadership, has brought together our allies and partners again. which certainly was our foreign policy relationship with heads of states was gutted and destroyed by the last administration. And this is a president that has been able to strengthen NATO alliance again because of his leadership, has been able to bring more than 50 countries together to help support Ukraine as they're battling the aggression from Russia. And that is occurring because of this president's leadership. And so I think that is important. And because we're saying that we're not going to speak to a private merger, a company's merger, a private entity, does not make the president weak.
He was briefed on it though, right?
It does not make the president, of course he's going to be briefed on it. He's the president of the United States. But does not, but we're not going to comment on it because it is a private entity. We've been consistent. We've been consistent. He's the president of the United States. He gets to know everything that's going on in the world, in the country, right? That is important for him to know. He's one of the leaders of the free world.
To get briefed on private.
All right, I've answered your question. We're going to move on. Go ahead, Courtney.
Karine, thanks. Questions on two topics, but first I just want to quickly follow up on the question about LIV Golf and the PGA Tour. President Biden has been very direct in the past about expressing his concerns about human rights violations in Saudi Arabia, about the Crown Prince's role in the killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Do you really mean to say that you have no comment on this massive investment by Saudi Arabia taking a huge foothold in one of the U.S.'s biggest sports?
Well, we've been very clear. When it comes to mergers, when it comes to a private entity, we do not comment. I mean, that is not unnatural. That is not uncommon from us here at the White House. Look, when it comes to human, let me finish. Let me finish. When it comes to human rights, we have been very clear. This president has not shied away on calling that out. And he's done that with Saudi Arabia. He's done that with other countries. We've been very clear about that. We will speak out. We do not shy away from that. And been, again, very, very clear. When it comes to a merger with these two entities, that is something that we're just not going to comment on. But when it comes to human rights, we've been very clear. We're going to call that out. We are going to call that out with countries just across the globe. And the president has done that in these last 2 years.
Okay. Thanks, Karine. Wanted to give you an opportunity to perhaps correct the record or at least respond to something former President Trump said last night. Last night he called his arrest, quote, the most evil and heinous abuse of power in the history of our country, and he accused the current president of having him arrested, effectively directing his arrest. Your response?
I'm not going to comment to that.
Okay. Wanted to ask you about Senator Tuberville, who is currently holding up the promotions of about 250 senior officers. He has reportedly rejected the most recent offer by some of his Republican colleagues to address this issue as part of the annual defense authorization bill, and he is maintaining that he wants a vote on the Senate floor to reverse this Pentagon policy that pays travel costs for service members seeking abortion or other reproductive health care. So Senator Tuberville says that he hasn't heard from the White House at all on this issue. I'm wondering why not. And what's the White House's view on what the path forward is here? Should the Senate begin holding individual votes on senior military promotions to start advancing some of this?
So a couple things at the top, which is, I think, incredibly important. What the senator is doing by holding these nominations, it's a threat to our national security, period. That's what he's doing. These are important nominations that we need, that the American people need to keep our country safe. And so and not only that, they risk our military readiness by depriving our armed forces of leadership and hurt our military families. That's what he's doing by holding these DOD nominees. All our military nominees that Senator Tuberville is blocking need to be confirmed quickly, and we have been consistent about that. This is something that's come up in the briefing room multiple times at this point. Senators should not play politics. They should not play politics with our military assistance, with our military readiness, and with our military family. And so, look, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what the mechanics should be in getting this done. We've been very clear that it needs to happen, and I just don't have anything else to share about a conversation with the senator.
Well, why hasn't the White House spoken with him, and what does the White House see as the path forward here? I mean, you guys have said it's a matter of national security. I presume that means it's a top priority.
I mean, first of all, it's shameful that he's doing this, right? I mean, he needs to be asked the question is, why is he putting our national security at risk? That is something for a senator to be able to answer to. We're trying to do the right thing. by moving forward and protecting our military readiness and protecting our military families. And so, look, I can't speak to conversations. I have to talk to our Office of Leg Affairs. I do not know when the last time that they spoke to the senator. But what I do know is what he's doing is putting our national security at risk, truly.
And then very quickly on something that was brought up earlier, Senator Risch and his blocking of a $735 million arms package to Hungary in order to get them to approve Sweden into NATO. Did the White House coordinate at all with Senator Risch? Do you guys agree with that strategy? And do you believe that he should maintain that hold until Hungary approves?
No, I heard the question from Colleen. I don't have anything to add or anything to elaborate on that. Go ahead, Joe.
And then secondly, the president invited his son Hunter to the state dinner last night. I'm wondering if you could take us into the thinking and decision-making of why the president decided to invite his son.
I'm just not going to get into family discussion, personal family discussion. As you know, Hunter is his son. I'm just not going to get into it.
Let me ask you this. If Hunter Biden wasn't the president's son, would he have invited someone who had just reached a plea agreement with federal prosecutors 2 days earlier?
A couple of things. Again, that's his son. He's a family member. It is not uncommon for family members to attend events at the White House. You could look at past presidents. I'm sure you have. So that is not uncommon. As it relates to anything related to Hunter, I'm just not going to respond to it from here.
Can I follow up on that?
Okay. No, I just called in somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Kirby wouldn't answer James's question, though. Are you going to answer the question? I mean, not a reasonable question to ask whether the President of the United States was involved, as this message seems to suggest, in some sort of coercive conversation for business dealings by his son. Is that something, if he wasn't, then maybe you should tell us.
So here's the thing, and I appreciate the question. I believe my colleague at the White House Counsel has answered this question already, has dealt with this, has made it very clear. I just don't have anything to share outside of what my colleagues have shared, and so I would refer you to him and the DOJ. Just not going to comment from here.
Text message.
What I can tell you is I know that my colleague has dealt with this. He addressed this at the White House Counsel. I just don't have anything else to share.
In the shakedown attempt?
I just answered the question. I just answered the question.
No, you didn't. Yes or no? Was the president involved in the shakedown attempt?
Stephen, I just answered the question. It's not up to you how I answer the question. I just answered the question by telling you my colleagues at the White House Counsel has dealt with this, and I would refer you to them. Go ahead.
Karine, can you just remind us what your colleague said from the White House Counsel so we have it from you at the podium?
I would refer you to them, and they will share their statement with all of you.
My question is about your statements from that podium. You've stated that the president stands by his comment from the 2020 campaign that he never once discussed his son's overseas business dealings with his son. And you stood at that podium and you reaffirmed that. Do you stand by your reaffirmation?
What I will say is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And I will leave it there. Anything else, I will refer you to the White House Counsel.
This is not a change?
I just answered the question. You just asked me, does my statement change? I just told you nothing has changed. That's answering the question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The president was there 2 days
Go ahead,
prior.
Stephen. I'm calling on your colleague right now. Go ahead.
Thank you. To follow up on my colleague, is there anything that you can say with regard to this text message and what the president's son was alleging? Was the president there or not?
I would refer you to my colleagues at the White House Counsel. They have addressed this, and I refer you to them. Now, I know many people have been following the news in Delaware today and we're going to have a lot of questions. And so here's what I'll say at the top before I turn it over to my colleague, the Admiral. Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and this was a personal matter for him. As we have said, the President, the First Lady, they love their son, and they support him as he continues to rebuild his life. This case was handled independently, as all of you know, by the Justice Department under the leadership of a prosecutor appointed by the former president, President Trump. So for anything further, as you know, and we've been very consistent from here, I'd refer you to the Department of Justice and to Hunter's representatives, who is his legal team, obviously, who can address any of your questions. With that, I have the Admiral here, Admiral John Kirby, who's going to take any foreign policy questions you all may have, and also give a preview of an important meeting that the President's going to have tomorrow, a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister. I've missed you. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah? How's baby Karine?
She's good. She
baby KJP.
very nice to her dad.
Oh, during your
Just
your
like
leave?
adult KJP.
Oh, that's good. I like, that's good. Okay.
I have another question that you probably were not expecting.
Okay.
Does President Biden want to limit Americans to 2 beers a week?
Where is this coming from?
It's
Maybe I
coming-
did. Maybe I didn't miss you so much. Where's this coming from?
All right, well, Dr. George Koob, who is the director of the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, says the U.S. may soon follow Canada and recommend just 2 beers a week. How do you guys think that's going to go?
Let me tell you what I'm not going to get involved in that question right there. I have no idea. I've not seen the data. I cannot speak to this. I will leave it to the experts and not weigh
So if
in.
the experts say 2 beers a week, that's okay with
I
President Biden?
I will leave it to the experts. I'm just not going to comment on that.
Okay.
China,
Go pass it.
Thank you, Corinne. So still on China, they just published this new map that includes territories of Taiwan, India, Malaysia, Philippines. We know that the president will be in New Delhi and in Hanoi. The vice president will be in Jakarta meeting with ASEAN leaders. What can we expect from them on this issue of territorial disputes, and how forward-leaning would they be?
So a couple things on his trip in Hanoi. Since day one, the administration, we have focused on rebuilding and investing in our allies and partners, right, throughout the world, and especially within the Indo-Pacific. You saw that most recently with the trilateral that he held at Camp David, a historic meeting there. As the United States looks to deepen our ties with the region, Vietnam is going to be a key partner. And so the deliverables that will be announced as part of this visit will reflect both the breadth and also the depth of that relationship. As you know, we try not to get ahead of this president as these trips are upcoming. As it relates to the vice president, as you just mentioned, she's going to be going to Jakarta. Will be a continuation of her work as well. She's been a partner in this when it comes to strengthening our partnership with ASEAN nations on maritime security in the South China Sea. The vice president has spoken extensively throughout the Indo-Pacific about the importance of international rules and norms, and you can expect that conversation and that kind of approach to continue on her trip as well. She has spent significant time working on these issues with leaders from Southeast Asia. You can expect the vice president to discuss the South China Sea as well throughout her meetings in Jakarta. A couple of things: she will reaffirm our support for the freedom of the seas, peaceful resolution of disputes, and adherence of international law, including freedom of navigation. She will advance our work with ASEAN partners to preserve martial law, and she will make clear peace and stability in the South China Sea is vital to the entire world. Again, not going to get ahead of those that specific engagement, but it is consistent and it is a continuation of what her work has been, as she's clearly in partnership with this president as we move forward in the Indo-Pacific.
Specifically say whether the president or the vice president would discuss specifically about this new Chinese map?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of that. I just laid out what we have been working towards, right? Deepening that relationship, which is incredibly vital, that Indo-Pacific relationship. So it's certainly going to be a continuation of that. Those trips are upcoming, and so once we have more to discuss and lay out and read out, we certainly will do that. But look, we look forward to these types of diplomatic conversations, and again, deepening those important, critical relationships that the president has been leading on since the beginning of his administration. Go ahead, Ed.
Should we anticipate?
Thanks, Karine. So what do you call it here at the White House when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So what do you call it, Peter, when GOP puts forth a wait, no,
Ask
you can't.
Karine?
I'm answering. Okay, we're gonna move
You're
on.
answering a question with a question? Okay.
No, we're moving on.
Karine,
We're moving.
please.
In the back. Go ahead.
You said you were
Go
stopping
ahead,
the
in
flow
back.
at the border.
No.
10,000
I tried to
migrants.
answer, Peter. I
Okay.
tried to answer the question. You stopped me. Let's go. Go ahead.
So there was footage yesterday of Border Patrol cutting some of the razor wire that Texas had installed. Governor Abbott has vowed to reinstall it. They have his border czar has pictures of people taking fresh razor wire out to the border to reinstall it. Is there now a federal policy of removing the barriers that Texas is installing?
So here's what I'll say. I would have to look into that. I did see those reports yesterday, but As it relates to Governor Abbott, we know what he has done these past couple of years while this president has been in office. He's turned this, when it comes to the border, he's turned this into a political stunt. And that's what he's done over and over again. That's what I can speak to. I did see those reports. I would have to go back and get a sense from the team and give you an answer on that.
The president's spoken to Speaker McCarthy, or former Speaker McCarthy, since yesterday. Has he spoken to the Speaker Pro Tem, McHenry, in the time since? Has he had any calls that you can share with us with those, because he needs them, as he acknowledged, to try to get Congress working and to get America working again for the American people?
I'm not going to get into any private conversation. You're right. The president was very clear. He believes that they need to get back to work. House needs to get back to work. They need to figure out who their speaker is going to be. He's willing to work in good faith with whoever the speaker is.
Just to be clear, when you say I'm not going to get into private conversations, you're not acknowledging that there were private conversations, just that you won't say yes or no.
What I can say is senior staffers, as I've said many times, have been in close touch with members in Congress. Over the past several weeks, over the past several months, that's something that happens pretty regularly. And I can say this, that the president himself regularly, often, has conversations with members in Congress because of his some of them are relationships that he's had for some time now. I'm just not going to get into each conversation that he's had. They're private discussions. We don't read out each and every conversation that the president has. That's where I'm going to leave it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Why wasn't the president originally scheduled to attend this meeting with this roundtable later this afternoon? It wasn't on the guidance from yesterday when it was published.
Well, as you know, the president tends to do drop-bys on the day of. The president's schedule has been incredibly busy over the last couple of days, as you know, right, with the situation that's currently happening in Israel, with making calls, meeting with his NSC team, and he believed, because the leaders were coming in, that he wanted to drop by and have a conversation and say that we are there with them. This happens all the time. It's not unusual for us to announce a drop by, and so this is what you're seeing today. And we believe this is going to be incredibly important for the president to be there with the Jewish leaders in the communities, and so it's important. It's going to be an important moment.
Is there anything you can tell us about this incident that happened with Congressman Van Orden and White House staff? Apparently he was belligerent during the briefing on the attacks in Israel, was shouting profanity at them. Is there anything you can tell us about that incident?
No, I don't have anything to share beyond what you're reporting or the reportings from out of that. All right. No, we're going to go because we have to get ready for the Jewish leaders. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Karine. I know John Kirby addressed the protests on college campuses, and I appreciate that the president respects First Amendment rights to protest. But does the president view anti-Israel protests and sentiment on college campuses as anti-Semitism?
So look, I'm not going to get into what's happening across the country and at different universities. Not going to get into the specifics. As the Admiral said, the First Amendment right? That's what peaceful protest is really part of our democracy, being able for folks to be able to express their feelings. I'm not going to get into any specifics on that. The president has been very clear in wanting to make sure that Jewish Americans, wanting to make sure that Arab Americans, Muslims are protected here. That is what he believes in, that they have the right to live their lives and to feel protection and to feel like they're able to be part of a community. The president has been very, very clear on denouncing any type of violence. And so as it relates to peaceful protesting, people have the right to do that. But we're just not going to get into blow-by-blows of what's going on across the country. The president has been very clear, very clear.
Blow by blow, but the president himself said silence is complicity. So if there's anti-Semitic letters being sent by students or protests, sentiment at protests,
of course, the president is against anti-Semitism. Of course. This is a president that you have heard me say wants to protect communities, whether it's the Jewish community, the Arab American community, the Palestinian community. This is someone who is going to speak out against anti-Semitism, of course. But you're asking me, you were kind of conflating the two. You were asking me about protest, and you were asking me about this question.
If you talk to a lot of the protesters, you'll hear anti-Semitic comments.
And we're going to always denounce. We're always going to denounce anti-Semitism. But at the same time, people have the right to peacefully protest. But we, in this administration, are going to always denounce anti-Semitism, any form of hate, whether it's against the Jewish community, right? Anti-Semitism against the Muslim community, Arab American community, or the Palestinian. We are going to denounce any form of hate that comes towards those communities. As it relates to protests, peaceful protests, people have the right to do that, but this is an administration, obviously that's going to be very forceful and very clear about denouncing anti-Semitism. Go ahead, Phil. I thought you were going to explode for a second,
No,
so I wanted to make sure.
That comes later.
That
My question is about, I know earlier John said that you don't believe in a ceasefire now. We don't have troops on the ground. And you've spoken about it obliquely, but what would the U.S. need to see and support the ceasefire in that region? I mean, what's the end game for us?
I mean, the Admiral spoke to this at length and very, very clearly about where we stand, where the President stands on this. I don't have anything else to add. I mean, he was very clear about how what's important right now is it's to supporting Israel defend itself against terrorists. In a way that holds up the law of war and protects its civilians. That's what we want to see at this time.
But as far as an end game specifics, do you have specifics in mind that you?
I mean, the Admiral literally spoke to this. What our focus is on right now is to make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That is our focus right now.
And then finally, do you think that you'll be speaking, this administration will be speaking with members of Congress, House, and Senate prior to November 17th, which is when we face the next shutdown?
I mean, I've said this over and over again. We have our OMB director, Shalonda Young. We have the Office of Leg Affairs. Well, they have had consistent, continued conversations with members of Congress throughout, not just the past couple days, but the.
And then last night in a bipartisan vote, the House censured Congressman Rashid Tlaib. Does the President believe that was appropriate, that her comments justified that action?
So I'm not going to speak to the actions that Congress takes. We've been very clear in any other resolutions that include a censure. We've been very clear whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. That is for certainly Congress to take action on, and that is their prerogative. We've been clear. You've heard from members of NSC, whether it is the Admiral or whether it is John Feiner who spoke to this, that when it comes to the phrase that was used from river to the sea, it is divisive, it is hurtful, to many find it hurtful, and also many find it anti-Semitic. And so obviously we categorically reject applying the term to this conflict, but I will more broadly say, and this is something that John Feiner said when he had his interview on Sunday on Face the Nation, we respect that there are strong feelings about the war in Gaza, and and there are legitimate public debates and concerns about how it is being fought. So we have expressed strong views ourselves in public and in private conversations with Israeli officials, as you heard the Admiral speak to, as you all aware about the importance of preventing civilian casualties for sure, for certain. But remember, Israel is defending itself from terrorists who committed a horrific act. That's what we saw on October 7th, as you all know, and who have taken about 240 people hostage, including American citizens. So not going to speak to the actions that Congress took, but certainly as it relates to that term, we've been very clear. We strongly disagree.
Has anyone from the White House reached out to the Congresswoman, and given that she used a phrase that you just described as divisive and potentially anti-Semitic, does the White House plan to have any engagement with her? The President's head of the Democratic Party. Is there a place in the Democratic Party for somebody who uses phrases like that?
So we've been very clear. We just said we think that we strongly disagree in using that phrase. I mean, that is coming from here, from the White House, in a very public way. It's been said by many people at the White House. So we've been very, very clear about that. I don't have any conversations to read out to you with the Congresswoman. Just don't have anything from here at this time to read out. But look, we've been very clear, very, very clear about using how it is important to be mindful about the language that we use, especially in this time, and we'll continue to speak out to that.
Great. There was an update. I just wanted to be curious.
The House Oversight Committee has now issued a subpoena for the former White House counsel Dana Remus. They're also asking for 4 other transcript interviews with White House employees regarding the classified documents that were found in Rehoboth or in Wilmington. I'm just curious, would the White House support cooperating with the
committee's oversight, specifically with this subpoena for Dana Remus?
I'm just not going to comment from here, which is consistent with what we've been doing from here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Follow up on Phil's question. Will the House Democrats know the president's position on whether or not he would sign that continuing resolution before they have to vote on it?
Well, the
Is that-
president literally just talked about this. One of your colleagues asked him about this particular CR, and he said that he wants to. There's going to be conversations on the Hill, negotiations on the Hill, and he wants to talk to the leadership. And so that's in the Democratic House and Senate, and that's what we're going to do. Don't have anything else to share.
Can I ask about APEC?
I'm just going to go.